গার্গী যোশী লেখা আছে।
তুই চিনি।
কি করে করবো? করা যায়?
Hello, everybody.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Hi,
Hi.
you are the first.
Yeah, you are the first, right? Besides Xiaowen, Alia, Akiko, a lot of people.
Hey.
I just
Hi, Jeffrey.
just a minute for me.
Compared to that of most developed countries, including South Korea and now even Italy. The U.S. dealings with China are not confined to a war of words between Washington and Beijing. See, there's also this. Last week, the United States sent B-52 bombers into the South China Sea as a show of force in the region. And then over the weekend, 2 more U.S.
Massimo?
Hello.
South China Sea, USS and the USNS Cesar Chavez.
Hi, Velia. How are you?
Patrol the area off the coast.
I don't hear you very good. I maybe have to take my headphones. Yeah.
China argues, look, the region is part of the South China Sea, which belongs to them, they say, historically.
Hi, Valia. Can you hear
Hello.
me?
How are you?
Hi, you.
Nice to see you.
Oh. Very nice to see you too. How's the situation in Brazil with coronavirus?
It's bad.
Very bad. Okay. Can you hear better?
Yeah, much better, yes.
Hello to everybody. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm fine, I'm fine.
Okay.
Lying on my bed, you know, my working place is my
Okay.
bed. Yes.
Good, very good working place.
Yes.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Will. Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Hello, Bunny.
Okay.
Hello, Rob. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, doing great.
Good.
Hi, Massimo.
Hi, Sukanta. Hi. Are you doing
How's
well?
life? How's life?
Not bad, not bad. Luckily,
Good.
good.
Really nice to know.
Oh, happy to see you.
Yeah, this is only possible because of the online option.
Yeah.
So we are.
So, hello everybody. Yeah, it's time. 3 o'clock in Berlin, 1 p.m. UTC, and your local times everywhere. I'm glad that so a lot of people and many people are around and want to be involved in the process of restructuring the global heat flow database. Before starting, I would like to ask some basic questions. First, there was a request from some of the IHFC members whether we can record this session and provide to them because they cannot attend this online meeting. Is there someone who does not agree that we record this as a video and provide limited access to current IHFC members that cannot attend now? Are you agree to do so?
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. In this case, I would start the record now, and to everyone from the commission who wants to watch this, they can access this. Okay. Second, I think we have, well, almost 20 attendees now, which is more or less the number of people who registered. Yeah, some new, just a minute. So 21. Okay, I guess that everyone from you has the agenda with a PDF. Otherwise, have a look into the chat. Here you can download the agenda for this meeting now. And I now would share my screen with you and slip through some slides along this this discussion and this meeting now. So is this visible for you now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So first, welcome. And probably the goal of what we want to do now and today. You know, today the goal is just to discuss and agree on a working procedure, a workflow, how we can organize ourselves to rework on the structure of the global heat flow database. So this is a very specific focus of this meeting, and as we are from everywhere and we just have, I would like to stick to the 90 minutes announced. I kindly ask you that we stick to this topic and notice other topics for later discussion. Beyond that, I kindly ask you to mute your microphone as long as you are not actively talking to all the other people. Otherwise, we will have interferences on the headphones or similar things, so that would help. The agenda is the same. You can find as a PDF in the chat function. So what we want to do now is just quickly talking about the participants. I would like to give every one of you, or each one of you, 2 or 3 sentences to introduce yourself. And then we need to talk about the revision process of the database, I think. I would like to give you all an overview of the current and yeah, about the status quo and the current activities. And then actually there's the most important thing, the topic 2, thinking about how we can update the database structure, how we can scheduling such a work, how we can organize ourselves in thematic groups, and we want to give some suggestions how we can do that and discuss amongst all of us whether this is suitable. We should have other ideas or similar things. And yeah, finally we can discuss tools that can help us on this way, and probably a date for the next video meeting. Okay. Yeah, this participant list is actually, this is a list of registered people. which is not complete in the sense that there are other people now joining. We are thinking about to write a protocol, and I suggested that my colleague Ben Norden is doing that. He would circulate it to you, and afterwards that you can make your comments, recommendations, changes, whatever you want. But I think we should stick to one person to do that. Do you agree with that procedure? So no feedback yet, so I guess you agree.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
No problem. Great, Ben, that's your task now to write the protocol. Yeah, first step, and I would like in 3-4 minutes give you an overview of what we have done in the past 9 to 12 months. So since the IUGG 2019 in Montreal. You might remember that there were some decisions adopted during that meeting, and this decision, or the general feeling, was that the global heat flow database needs a kind of revision, and so there was a general assignment that we need a quality assessment, a redesign, probably something like a more modern infrastructure, but definitely specific work on the database and making it fit for digital research, well, 2020, let's say. And yeah, from this point on, we started in the third quarter 2019, and we relaunched the IHFC website, which was located in Aachen so far, but shut down 10 years ago, more or less. So this is what was done more or less in the past year. You can visit the website via the link, ihfc-iugg.org. We also have relocated the database and shifted it from the website of the University of North Dakota to the website of the IHFC itself. This was done in the past 2 weeks, or 2 weeks ago, more or less. And in the meanwhile, we Rebusnot, thanks to you, sent us the most recent data, and we started to look for necessary updates of publications that were published over the past years and not included yet. In this process, we also have started to look at everything available on the market of heat flow data and heat flow data publications. So this is a very dynamic process to build such a thing like a literature database available to the commission itself, which should build the ground for a later reassessment, that we really have the original literature available for everyone. And yeah, finally, this is where we are positioned right now, and this is a process we want to start now, thinking about whether the database structure reflects the requirements and demands of nowadays research data infrastructures and digital research, let's say. Yeah. Once, or when this will be finished, the database structure, of course, the next step then would be to think about global reassessment, and this, like today, really requires a huge collaborative agreement and work from a lot of people, because what we are deciding now could be mandatory for future heat flow data, but of course we need to think whether we need to prove and rework the old data as well. And this will take time, and probably it will take more time than the term 2019 to 2023 we are looking on right now. Okay, there are 2 other participants joining now. Just wait a second. Okay. Hello, Maria. Hello, Florian.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So we started a couple of minutes ago. Welcome. Please mute the microphone as long as you are not actively speaking. You find the agenda within the chat, and you can have watch a record of the first 10 minutes afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, and this is yeah, this is more or less what, in very short words, what has been done so far. Are there questions to these points at the moment? Otherwise, I would go over to topic 2. So questions of understanding or similar things.
No.
Apparently not. Okay. So then we should talk about the important things. How we can create a working procedure to update the heat flow database structure. And I think, first of all, we should talk about the actual goal, what we are doing here, and that we more or less have the same basic we are going ahead from. So this is more, yeah, this is something compiled from the minutes of Montreal, and I think from the general discussion within the heat flow community. The wish that we need an authenticated global heat flow database with quality control or quality control data, where metadata are available that help to understand what type of heat flow we are talking about with quality, and it must be more or less kind of fit to modern research data infrastructure. And so actually the question then is, what does it need to reach that goal? And if we're thinking about information on heat flow type, on quality of modern research data infrastructure, the question is whether we need to extend the basic structure for the database available from JSOP, and whether we need to think about more detailed quality criteria and procedures to control such a quality and to rank such values. This is at least what I understand, what is the general goal, and the question is whether you agree on that or not. Are there additional comments on that from your side? Okay, apparently not. So with this general goal, there is a point of required work. And this work proposed for this workshop is that we need to prove existing items in the database structure. So those items defined by Jessup et al. In 1976. And we need to define new items, probably that we think are necessary for more quality control and so on. So within this workshop, we need to define the name, the unit, the range, the detailed description, and probably also a reason for an item. This is at least my suggestion. And the work that needs to be done for the database. Comments on that? No, apparently not.
Yeah, I think, Sven, there would be a larger discussion later on, right?
Yeah, of course. Just
okay. So I guess,
yeah.
So I think you should just go ahead right now.
Okay, I will do.
Perhaps we can type comments into the chat box as we think of them, rather than interrupting.
Yes.
The flow of the talk.
But I hope that you need to mention that later on. Otherwise, I probably got lost if a lot of people writing comments to order them, and I don't want to miss those items. So probably,
yeah, sure.
if I would continue with two points, and that are totally suggestions. The one point would be just a potential scheduling as a suggestion, and probably an organization in thematic groups. And when we stand at this point, I would open the discussion just for the suggestions we presented. The potential scheduling we are thinking about is that we are working in thematic groups. I'm sorry. We are working in thematic groups on those database items now. This work could take place for probably 2 months from now on. Would be concluded by a video meeting and a presentation of the working group results. And then subsequently there would be a second phase where those preliminary results will be distributed to all participants and would be ready for further iteration. So while the first phase would be limited, or where in the first phase working groups are working on very specific parts, in the second phase everyone can look at each result and comment on that in a very general procedure. And this second phase also should include discussion on quality criteria. And you will understand this on the next slide when I show you the working groups I would suggest. However, after discussing on quality criteria, after commenting and recommending recommendations on this first iteration, there would be a second video meeting required with a stepwise discussion and, let's say, approval of items where we can agree on. Probably this would turn over in the third meeting if we cannot agree on all items in one session. That could be possible. So a week later probably is a third one. And well, the final goal, at least from my point of view, should be that we agree on a structure that can be published out of this of this group of people surrounded right now. And well, our suggestion for thematic groups, and this is nothing new. This is also a compilation we provided for self grouping during the Chinac 7 submission process. Is that in phase 1 you have 4 groups more or less. One group caring about thermal rock properties, one about temperature and temperature gradients or temperature information, the third one about heat flow determination, parameter methods, corrections in this term, uncertainties, and the fourth one about, let's say, metadata and flags, which includes geologic informations, the domain information, site-specific information, things like that. And our suggestion would that we discuss about the general approach, the thematic groups, if you think this is a valid approach, if those groups are fine with you, or if we extend or reduce it. And then, of course, about the allocation of new people to each group. And yeah, with this, I actually would open the discussion on that. And
hi. May I just talk?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I think there are too many thematic groups. I mean, what we want is a heat flow database and not a database for thermal properties or methods. So my suggestion would be, and I say that from a point of a marine heat flow person, to incorporate all measured heat flow in marine settings, and then retain only those which are well documented and kick out those which have no documentation.
Okay, other comments?
Rob might have comments on marine heat flow data as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess whether or not it's documented could be one of the fields. You know, I would hate to lose data. I don't know that that's what Heiner was recommending, but hate to lose data that's poorly documented, but certainly that could be one of the things one could sort on.
theoretically, I think even for continental heat flow data, that should be a good criteria. However, I think it's more complicated because there are very different kinds of data in the continental heat flow database. And is it just possible to throw them away? That's a big ask.
Sven, I'd like to support your proposal to have the different thematic groups. I think it is important. I'm going to respectfully disagree with some of the earlier comments. I think modern data management principles dictate that primary data does need to be made available. So it's not just a collection of interpreted heat flow. That made sense back in the 1970s. But I think modern day data management infrastructure and principles dictate that this group, which is effectively the global custodian of thermal data, not just heat flow numbers, but the thermal data that underpin those heat flow numbers. I think we have an obligation to make those primary data available wherever possible. So yes, we can have a heat flow database as an evolution of the existing heat flow database, but wherever possible, and certainly from this point forward, new data generated should be made available and managed in the best practice possible, which means storing them perpetually as much as possible, and using digital pointers to make those data available to anybody who wishes to probe into the principal data and not only the interpreted heat flow. So I think to reach that point, we do need working groups to look at temperature data and temperature gradients and the metadata that should accompany those primary data, and how and where those data should be stored, and how they should be identified, and all your other points, the heat flow determinations, thermal property data, heat production data, all those things. I actually agree with the structure that you've put forward, Sven.
I agree with Graham. I think this should be like a more global approach, and it just makes sense. So I just want to support what you just said. It really makes sense. Of course, it's a lot of work. It's more work. And I think there's going to be more challenges to overcome, but I think it's really worth it. And then if we can really provide the general community all this access to this kind of data in a orderly and controlled way, then we'll be really contributing. And but of course, it's challenging. On that, I agree that it's going to be more difficult that we only stuck to the heat flow, the interpreted heat flow data. Thank you.
I'll just give just slightly more context. I'm 4 months into a 2-year research program down here in Australia that's looking at collecting a whole bunch of new heat flow data using a range of different instruments, from sort of conventional wireline temperature tools to fiber optic DTS cables and active heat source fiber optic measurements as well. So we're going to be generating a fair bit of site-specific and instrument-specific data, and it's an obligation from my research funding group that data must be made publicly available following fair principles, so findable, accessible, interoperable, and repeatable principles. So I want to work with this global body to make sure what we're doing down in Australia is consistent with other global activities that are going on through this body. So that's just a bit of personal context.
Sukanta?
Yeah, I think I agree, and it's the point of Graham Beardsmore is very well taken. However, we are now worrying. I think we should worry first about what should be the database like, the global heat flow database. And it's excellent. It's extremely useful to have all the information on thermal properties and everything else in the database. But then that's going to be really is that not going to be a duplication of the documentation that is already available in the published papers? So if, I mean, you can make the database a really big database, a large database having all kinds of information in that. But is the heat flow database, the purpose of the heat flow database, is it to allow a person, a heat flow practitioner, or anybody, any earth science worker, to make an assessment of the, to make a determination of heat flow from all those properties, or to make an assessment whether the quality is good or not, quality is reliable or not? So there, I mean, it's, as I said, it's really nice to have all the data, but then one has to have a balance somewhere, because otherwise we'll be duplicating all the information. And every database, every data point in a database has a reference to a published work. And in future, we should make that mandatory, that whichever is documented, whichever data is documented should go into the database. So there is a reference.
That is a good point, and I would give an answer to that. The philosophy documented in Jessop et al. 1976 was the user is responsible to check for quality and go back to primary literature. That is far beyond what is possible for people that work on a global scale with heat flow data. That is simply, this is a concept that is outdated for modern databases. You cannot compile a data set and say that is a global compilation, but do not care about the quality. Just because you argue, we take over the data and people are forced to go back into the primary literature to check for it. In this case, you know, Irina has discussed this, I think, a decade ago in one of her papers, that she checked a lot of the database and came out that a huge amount of data was not simply not valid, was not meeting the original publications mentioned there. So I think a data compilation that is not quality proof from us as experts is simply not usable for researchers that had not the time and the experience to go into the primary literature and to check on their own. I think this must be the major step forward. We need to go as IHFC. This is our responsibility, as I understand it, that we take care about a database that is quality controlled. And if you want to quality control a database, you need to have the required information necessary to compute a heat flow value. And you need to have the information that document how this is done and what kind of heat flow do you see in the database actually. So in this term, the comment from Heiner that he, as far as I understood, that he recommends to expel or exclude a large amount of marine data that are not documented. I don't know if we need to exclude things, but if we flag items according to available metadata, available documentation, we can give the people or the users a chance to decide based on really on documented data and information whether he wants to see all data, whether he wants to see only data where you have a complete data set of conductivities and gradients, or you know, individual selection of what is possible, because otherwise we would exclude data which is probably documented in the primary literature, but not in the database yet. And therefore, I would vote for some more details that give you the chance to recognize what is available in the data, what is the quality, and to rank those data.
Second,
yeah.
So what is mean by primary data? Only heat flow values with location, or temperature data, gradient, everything?
Oh, yeah, this is okay, a matter of understanding. What I mean with primary data is that today people are forced, you select data from the database, and then you are forced to go back into original references to check for the type probably of heat flow and the quality of heat flow, and probably some important backbone data you want to know. They are not included in the databases, either because they are not available or because they had not been included yet. And I think we cannot accept that we compile a global heat flow database and we force the people to use the original reference to check for the quality of the data included in our database.
There are a number of published marine heat flow values from the 60s made by Americans, by Russians, where it is almost impossible to judge the quality because it lacks documentation. So what do? And in fact, a lot of those numbers, a lot of the measurements are valid, are good.
That is an important point, and I think that we need to make this transparent. That actually we cannot judge about the quality, about quality or disquality doesn't matter, and that we need to flag those data that are undocumented. So Kanta probably.
Yeah, I mean, there are similar cases in the continental heat flow database, and there are many cases. I mean, the point is, should we go back to the data sets from the beginning and start revisiting them, re-looking them, or go forward and start making a criteria for the future? For example, there can be so many questions, so many debates, and I think everyone knows about them. My colleague Labani and I have seen a lot of data sets in India, and similarly, I think everybody else has seen in their own countries. There are convective heat flows and there are conductive heat flows. And I mean, if you go by a definition, then that definition has to be agreed by everybody. One can report a heat flow of 200 milliwatt per square meter, but that's not going to be a conductive heat flow. So there are many questions. It really needs a larger discussion.
Yes, I see this discussion about how we set up a global protocol for recording future heat flow measurements. So it's not so much the historical heat flow measurements. We can't go back and recreate data that has been lost. So that's not possible. So the best we can do with the historical records is to bring the existing database up to scratch so it's digitally findable, digitally searchable, and with some robust quality indicators in there. So there is some There's a bit of work to do there, but that's manageable, and that's probably the best we can do with historic data. So, but for future data with present digital recorders, digital repositories, we can do a lot better. And as new data get recorded and incorporated into the database, then the data set will become richer and richer. But we do need to get the protocols in place, I think.
Any comments from other people on that?
Okay, Sven?
Similarly, with the thermal properties, Sven, as we have seen, it's. I mean, how much is enough? How much data is enough? How do you determine that? It's not an easy thing to if you set up a group which decides on the quality of each and every data that is being produced, I am sure the group can do no other work than only this. And I mean, you can never define what is enough. Somewhere, if we get 5 core samples, we have 5 measurements. If we get 100 core samples, we have 100 measurements.
You're talking about a matter of quality assessment. I'm talking about what items are required for such a quality assessment. This is the difference. I don't want to judge now in the first phase, are 5 samples or 100 samples enough? That is not the point. The point is, what information do we need in the first phase for each heat flow data? What additional information do we need that we can later on judge on the quality? And so that is why I propose that we have 4 groups, and that each group looks on one specific field, so properties, heat flow, temperature, and so on, and make a suggestion which we can discuss on all together in a second phase, and which is our grounds to discuss about what kind of heat flow criteria do we want to develop, what is necessary nowadays. And so yes, it is a difference, first the items, and then we discuss, are the items sufficient from each group? Probably they forgot something. And do we need to extend it all together in a second phase? And once we have done this, are those items sufficient really to decide whether we can apply quality approaches, quality codes on that? And that are 2 totally different things from my point of view.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's fine.
So Jeffrey, probably.
Oh, I just wanted to say I agree also with the 4 thematic groups. Of course, it's not easy to separate these items as they are related, but I think it's probably the best way to do it in the 4 groups. And as you say, to see the maximum amount of items that we can add, and then maybe in a later stage also reduce some of them, because some of the remarks I agree that we should not get a thing that is too big to keep alive. So it should be also on a good size, I think. But that's the work of there's the first step with the different working groups, and let's see what comes out of this.
Okay, so I think there are no further comments at the moment. If this is the case, there's questions of the majority of you think that we should continue such a procedure to develop or to separate different groups for themes or thematic groups. And if this is the case, I just would ask for you raising the hands, for example, that we have visually an expression if you agree to build thematic groups.
Sorry, but I think marine and continental heat flow have completely different problems. And mixing that up doesn't make sense. I appreciate determining heat flow in boreholes on land is much more complicated than doing it in a marine setting.
But do you think this cannot be considered within the working groups, that they need to look on the continental and the marine separately?
Well, could be done, but as I said, is it a heat flow database or is it the thermal property database?
No, it's a heat flow database for sure, but you need to have the data that underpin the heat flow data and that allows you to judge about quality. Otherwise, you are forced to go back into the original literature, and this is actually not the goal of the database. You cannot, if this would be, if you would be forced to go back into original literature, you cannot create this database interoperable with other geoscientific databases.
Well,
because you always are forced to check the quality on your own, and I think,
I do.
This is actually the quality of the people around here, that we have, or most, actually you have spent so a lot of years in heat flow research, and there are not a lot of people in the world that have the experience you have. So actually it should be our responsibility to help geoscientists that have not the experience in heat flow. And we can do this best if we help with the quality assessment of the database. And one decision could be, okay, we need to exclude large parts of the database because they are undocumented, and this we can judge on this based on the experience we have, or you have. But not to do this means that we left this decision to people that have not the experience in some cases to do so. And for that, I think it's important to make this differentiation between marine and global heat flow data, because you're totally right that you need a different amount of information to judge about such data sets. But I think this could be done within the groups, that if the people are aware, and I think all of you are, that we have those two domains and we have different requirements and needs for each domain.
Sven, yeah, I just want to back you up on what you just said about the availability of the heat flow data as a product for a eventual final user that doesn't have an experience. So if you look at two other databases that are there, if you look, for instance, the ones that I've used personally, bathymetric data, seismic data, where we're looking at really large amounts of data. They're already filtered, they're already there for you to, as an end user, just to go there and look for wherever you're looking, look for a specific region, and then everything is there. And as you said, the people that is managing this data has already done this work. So I agree with you that, again, this is our responsibility, because otherwise, as you said at the beginning, the end user must go to the primary source and do all this work. So what's the point to have then a global heat flow data if we're not doing that work? And I also agree with Henrik that there are two different sources and they're very different natured, right? The marine and the continental heat flow. But I think we can solve this putting experts and in the groups, make sure that we have experts in each thematic group, that at least people that knows about marine heat flow, that has large experience on marine heat flow and continental heat flow, so they're not lost. I think that will probably be a solution to tackle this challenge.
Sven, if I understood you now correctly, the terms of reference of these thematic groups would be to determine what criteria of, say, thermal properties is necessary for a reliable heat flow determination, what criteria for thermal gradients is necessary, what amount of geological information or lithological information is necessary. If that's the purpose, then it's fine. I think we can go ahead with that. However, the next step would be really big. How much information you can include and how that information can be included in the database. So about the first part, if that's the purpose of the thematic group, I think we can go ahead.
Yes, so just I shared again. This is actually what I think is the work in the thematic groups. To define the parameter, the name, so the name of parameter, the unit, the range, a detailed description, what we're talking about, and the reason for the item. Exactly what you are talking, that we talk about the items, the structure of the database in the first phase. Yeah. And when everything comes together in the second phase, we can judge or we can comment on the work of the other thematic groups, writing recommendations, extend it or shorten it, so comment on it and have a collaborative approach to discuss this. And then we came to the point, what is required for quality and so on. So if I don't know if how the general feeling about this thematic groups is, but the majority of you raised the hands that if we consider the differences between marine and continental data, then we should start to define those groups. And as far as I understood you, that most of you agree with the groups and the naming, the range of the groups. Is that fine with you? Because if this is the case, I would suggest that we are going ahead to the next group, talking about who would like to be engaged in which group. So the allocation of people to each group. Who would like to work in what group? And I don't know how to do this best, but this could be something we can do via the chat function, and I write online your names into the groups. This is something you agree on? I don't have a better solution in mind yet, but the important thing is, of course, the first 2 months you are involved in only one thematic group, but you can afterwards in the next phase comment on all the work the other groups have done. So everyone has the chance to work on the overall setting, not only on one thematic group. But probably the best would be if you include your expertise where you have most expertise in properties, temperatures, heat flow, whatever. You put your work into those thematic groups. So my suggestion would be now probably write in your priority group and probably a second priority group, and I will write online now into the presentation, and then we just look whether we can achieve 4 to 6 persons per group. I think we are 22 attendees now. That would fit more or less, and let's see how your people are distributing across these groups.
Yeah, and then you could also invite other people who are not attending this meeting. There are experts outside this group as well.
Exactly.
Sven, could we add marine heat flow as a separate thematic group, maybe?
This, of course, if this is a suggestion, everyone or the majority thinks it's a good idea. Why not? This would mean that the other 4 groups, or the other 3 groups, would be limited to continental heat flow data. I don't know, what is the feeling of the other people about this proposal?
I like the idea of having us all combined.
No, in that case, you could have just 2 thematic groups, one for continental, one for marine data. and each group would look into all the parameters that are necessary, all the parameters that you have mentioned there, starting from thermal properties, temperature and thermal gradients, lithology, geology, everything. So otherwise there would be overlaps, right?
Yeah, sure. That is, yeah, what other people's comments, opinions, not mine, probably. Yeah, Ben?
Yes, hello everybody. I've just one question. At this point, who's actually working on marine heat flow data from our experts here? Heinrich, of course, is doing a lot of work there. And so a suggestion was, from my side, would be to have these groups we have for the continental heat flow and a marine heat flow group with these special demands for the heat flow topics. So otherwise, we could stay to the groups we have, and in the second phase, so when we all join the results from the first round, then we could add the marine. But I think the marine is and continental, they are different in their determination and in their so I would agree on adding a new group for marine heat flow data, and but stay to the groups we have, because also continental heat flow could be totally different in terms of what kind of heat flow is determined and how it is affected and so on. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, no further comments yet. I would suggest, probably you find at the bottom there's some kind of reaction smiley. So do you think that we, to all of you, do we think we should add a marine thematic group? Just show a positive reaction. So like this one.
Sven.
Oh, yes.
Just the question is what to do with all the offshore drilling data. I mean, because some of them which are maybe on the shelf or more close to, well, some aspects are close to marine heat flow data, but some things are come closer to continental type of data. So where should they be treated in that case?
Well,
yeah, if you're overcomplicating things.
I don't know whether we should clarify this now. This is a very valid point, Jeffrey.
Well, if we do two groups, it should be made clear now, because we should separate.
Yeah, but the group's just talking about items. You know,
Okay.
they're talking about database items, not about the data itself.
Mm.
Later on, if we're talking about new data or reassessing all data, there probably there need to be a decision how to treat them as marine or continental data. Yeah? But I think that shouldn't be the point for now. But we should keep this in mind for later. Okay, I think most of you have voted that we should have a marine data. So now would be the question, should we, besides the marine data, keep the other 4 thematic groups, so having 5 groups in total, and treating marine data separately? How do you think about that?
So does that mean that the other 4 groups, other 4 thematic groups deal only with the continents, right?
And this would be the case then if you want to treat marine data separately. I don't think that to separate our work into 2 groups only will not work, because 10 people, 12 people in a group is simply too much for an effective group work, I think. And I think it's, well, this is my personal opinion. I find it more appropriate to separate it to smaller groups that can really focus on very specific aspects here.
Yes, I agree with you that the smaller the group, the probably the effective, more effective in terms of a work group. And I totally agree that a marine heat flow group will be good. However, then it means that the marine heat flow group will have to do all the work that the other three groups are doing separately. So we really need to think this through in terms of that the people that it's going to be there, you know, part of this group will have to do the thermal properties and all the work that, you know, it's going to be divided for the continental heat flow. So this is another thing to consider as well. So that's what Sukanta said at the beginning made sense in terms of, you know, two groups, continental and heat and marine, but then maybe subgroups there. I don't know if will that help, but definitely we need to think about the amount of work that will fall onto a marine heat flow group if we take it completely separately. And then we will probably, it will be probably a larger group, and then we will probably have to subdivide, you know, tasks within that group as well to make it work, as you said.
But in this case, then we can stick to thematic groups initially proposed, and just keep in mind that we separate our considerations in each group for continental and marine requirements.
Rob, you have experience in both marine and continental heat flow. What's your suggestion for the thematic groups?
Yeah, I'm just digesting, I guess. Certainly continental and marine heat flow is treated differently with different concerns. I think, you know, people know that. I certainly think if you have keep the original working groups, then there should be, could be subgroups within the bigger working group, you know, one to look at continental and one to look at marine heat flow. I think in some cases it makes sense to break it apart. In other cases, say like thermal properties, right? It would be, you know, like thermal conductivity of rocks, if you're gonna, you know, like be able to sort on the database by lithology, right? And then marine muds would just be a different lithology. So maybe for thermal properties, doesn't make as much sense to separate out continental and marine heat flow, but certainly for the measurement techniques and that kind of thing, for the thermal gradient measurements, the temperature measurements, it does. So I guess, you know, the main thing is to have enough people in each working group to have a variety of expertise so that the different issues that come up with the different kinds of data can be adequately addressed.
So would it make sense then to check how people would distribute across probably 4 groups, and to check whether we can balance marine continental experience in each group? Yeah, okay. In this case, I would share the screen. I kindly ask you to use the chat to mention your priority selection as a group, probably a secondary selection as well. And I would write it down into the presentation. You can see right now. Okay, so let's go. I hope to see the chat function somewhere here. don't see this chat now. Okay.
Then can you put up the four thematic groups again on the screen?
Yeah, sure. Just a second, because for somehow reasons I cannot see the chat beside if I split my screen. So I just need to take over all your markers. Okay, just 20 seconds. Whoa. Okay, it's just split. Well, Jack, you should see this. Please correct me just by not by chat now. Just tell me whether I have picked up something wrong. I have not included yet the separation into marine and continental. Probably I should do this by color or something.
Yes, do it by color.
Okay, so Jeffrey, I think you had small marine, right? Massimo, you said continental, right? Okay, I just put the marine one. Marine emphasis is, this is, Heiner is also marine. Robert is marine. Other marine. I need to put this up. Other comments on that? Should I change something? Is that the current status quo? Did I forget someone who wants to have the marine or continental domain? So the marine domain? No. Okay, so then I just would raise the questions whether we find people from group 1 and group 2, so rough properties and temperature, probably one person from each group that would stick to heat flow determination or metadata to equalize it a bit.
Sven, I'm also marine heat flow as well, and I might, because I see my two other colleagues, Rob Harris and Florian Neumann, that are also experts on marine heat flow, so I could also maybe be part of group 4 then, if to balance things out.
Okay, that is welcome. But we need, I think we need, in particular, we should reduce people from the first 2 groups and put them into the second and third, in the third and fourth group.
Okay.
But of course I can.
Ben?
Yes.
Could you move me from thermal rock properties to heat flow determination, balance the groups?
Yeah, it's done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so could we reduce? Yeah.
Sven, I'm in 2 groups. I'm probably not allowed, so just don't know exactly.
In this group, I will clear your name in here. Is this okay? I don't know. It's your decision. Just.
Okay, Sven, I'm Gianluca.
Yeah.
So can you erase my name in the temperature and gradient? Okay, thank you.
Oh, sure.
Sven, sorry, I'm Paolo.
Yeah, hi, Paolo.
Okay, can I help in the heat flow determination group if you want? Okay, continental.
Yeah.
Sven.
Yes.
Yeah, Sven, could you include me, please, on temperature and gradients and continental heat flow, please? Thank you.
For the marine part, it doesn't really make sense to separate temperature and heat flow determination.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. I was thinking that, you know, I don't really see a big difference.
And I'm not sure what you mean with gradients. Like how you determine the gradient, or?
No, not. Do you hear me? Yeah. Not to determine. It's just means temperature gradients. It was just a group compilation, so a name for it. Make it easier. Let's talk about temperature, right?
Okay, but then move my name to heat flow determination, because in the case of a marine setting, I mean, that's so intimately connected.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. So is there anyone which name is not on the list?
Sven, this is Maria. Can you already twice. Will you please take me off the?
So may I ask you to add my name on Heatflow or whatever? My name is Akiko.
Yeah, I will do so. Just Maria, I did not get the last part of the sentence. I should remove one of it, but from the first or second group.
Let's keep the temperature.
Okay, let's keep the temperature, right.
And for the metadata and flags, Jared Smith, who's out of Cornell, is very interested in working with us, and that would be a topic he could help with a lot. His name is Jared, J-A-R-E-D. And the last name was Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think we have all people around, right? This is something we can agree on. So do we need people more or less not in charge, but who get the groups running? So probably who holds the group, the communication within the group. Is this something we should agree on now, or is this something the groups, each group will figure out on its own? It's probably the best way that you can connect to each other. So I will send the list around and the presentation around, so that you can see this afterwards again. And then I think the groups itself, they will organize how they communicate and how they organize themselves. Do you agree with that?
Excuse me, Sven. I think Hamza is missing. And can you explain a little bit what is the work in metadata and flags group?
Yes. Yeah. So, any suggestion first for where we can put Balia Hamza into it, or should we ask him afterwards? Yeah, probably we'll ask them afterwards. Metadata, that are probably things like site-specific information, informations on geological settings, could be information on database-specific information. So for data information systems, DOI information, things like that. This is something where the group needs to think about, I think. Should not contain corrections because corrections to methods should be included in the heat flow determination itself. But it could flags means probably data sets needs to be flagged if there are if you think about what type of heat flow, what type of influence is given there. So I think this is something we should discuss within these flags group. Okay. If this is done so far, I would continue, if you agree, with the third point, the tools we can use. This is just a suggestion. Probably you have other ideas or alternatives. We could use Google Docs for shared documents, and we have 10 minutes ahead, so I think we are good in time. I don't know if everyone is comfortable with Google Docs or have an alternative approach or has access to it. We could also use Nextcloud or alternative systems. This is where we need feedback from you. I would further stick to Zoom meetings. Otherwise, you have serious concerns in this term. And we can coordinate via email list or other things. So what do you think? What do you need to conduct this work? Is there something we can provide to you for an optimal thematic group work? No response yet? you're fine with that, I think. Okay. In this case, I would send to each group a list with the pre-selected items from Jessup et al. That belongs to this thematic group as a starting point. And then you organize yourself to continue with the work or to start with the work. Yeah, then probably we go back to one point. Do we agree that, the scheduling, 2 months of work for the thematic groups, is this sufficient? Is this manageable?
No. It's too ambitious.
Okay, so what is your suggestion on that?
Can you show again the schedule, please?
Sure. Here we are. So would be 3 months better? Or it's even too less, too little?
3 months will put us into August.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have vacation.
So,
no.
Okay, so end of August, beginning of September, would that be better? Is it?
Yeah.
What is with your other guys? So I assume silence as agree. Yeah, there's a thumb up. Okay, so let's say we made this
early September could be good.
Early September, right? Okay, we will check for a specific date. Then the phase of commenting, as distributing the work of all groups, and then comments, recommendations, discussion on that. I think then we should extend this to 3 months. Until end of the year.
Then at this point of time, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sure.
Would it be a good idea to for you to prepare a statement, a brief statement, mentioning what is the outcome of each thematic group? What would be the outcome of each thematic group? So that everybody gets focused on exactly what needs to be produced or what needs to,
So brief terms of reference.
Yep, brief terms of reference. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an excellent idea. We will do so. Okay. Okay, so we have first phase 3.5 months, then meeting by video early September, a second phase of discussion on the results, comments and recommendations. Then in early January somewhere a video meeting about the stepwise discussion and the approval of items, and so a bit more time for the groups and for every one of us to work on these issues. I think a general agreement on that. So yes, great. Then I stop here with sharing the screen. Okay, then in this case, I think we would agree on the next video meeting early September. I would send a doodle request for finding an appropriate date for every one of us soon, that we can book it. And then each group is organizing themselves with the work. We will send the file with the existing items from Jessup et al. And with the expectations for each group written down. And then I think we can now celebrate that we managed the first video meeting within the heat flow community of that size. So I'm glad that you all joined this meeting. And yeah, from my side of point of view, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sven, for organizing this. It's a great initiative.
Thank you very much, Sven.
Thank you, Sven, for organizing this meeting.
And I'm going to go home to bed now. It's almost midnight. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sven. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for organizing nice meeting tonight.
Bye-bye, Akiko.
Bye.
So, Sven, thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Bye-bye.
Keep contact. Yeah.
Exactly.
Keep in touch. Bye.
Bye, Gianluca. Elias, should we add your name into one of the groups?
Yes, you can add my name. Okay.
Where thermal rock properties, temperature, heat flow determination, what are you interested in?
Heat flow determination.
Okay. It's included, I will send it around.